Welcome to our latest 12 on 12 digital original, Student Setbacks and Successes. Navigating through COVID-19 has been so difficult for so many people. People have lost their jobs, losing loved ones to COVID-19, and then students just staying at home, especially the first part of COVID-19, not being able to see friends outside the classroom. I'm Mike Montecalvo.
And I'm Shannon Hegy. So many topics to cover of what's happened over the last year. We've brought together 4 superintendents from our area to discuss what's happened over the last year, virtual learning, what some of the setbacks and successes have been. We want to introduce them now. We have Dr. Cheryl McWilliams from Pawtucket, Harrison Peters from Providence. We have Craig Levi from Coventry and Janine Nodamasi from Cranston. Thank you, all of you, for being with us tonight.
Superintendent Peters, thank you for joining us. We're going to start with you, Superintendent Peters. Let's talk about what you saw with kids coming back to school in Providence. I just have, not just in Providence, but everywhere, we knew kids wanted to get back into the classroom. They wanted to learn in class, see their friends, and see their teachers. What did you see when the kids came back in the capital city?
No question. So we want to thank just all the amazing teachers out here that made it happen. We know that things like this don't happen in a vacuum, and it takes a lot of folks to welcome kids back. We've always valued and prioritized in-person learning because we know how important that is. And we understand that there has been just disrupted routines, economic hardships, illnesses in families, pervasive anxiety. That's what students brought back to us. And in order to get ready to receive them, we stood up a round of social emotional learning lessons. We had transition lessons for the entire first week of school. So we know that this pandemic has done a number on our families. So we spent the entire first week of school renorming, building community, reestablishing routines. As we move forward, we want to be able to have more supports in school. So we are engaging in ensuring that every school has at least one guidance counselor. We've been a district who's not had guidance counselors at the elementary level, so we're going to change that next year. And then we also know how important community is. So we're bringing in 36 community liaisons to be part of the school culture. And those are folks that students readily identify with the community. That's going to be part of our school community. So students will have a familiar face. They'll work with us in restorative practices and de-escalation strategies, and really just having a familiar face, because there's an importance having that bridge from community to school.
Absolutely. Thank you, Superintendent Peters. My next question is for Dr. Williams. Students in Pawtucket were the last in the state to go back to school full-time. They just went back at the beginning of March. What was the hardest thing for those students when it came to virtual learning?
So we did have, first of all, it's Dr. McWilliams, but thank you. So we did have students that were in school from September 14th, our pre-K, K, multilingual learners in our special populations. And you're correct, though, grades 1 through 8 were not full in person until we actually came back. Grades 1 through 6 came back on February 3rd. And then March 1st was our middle school grades 7 and 8. And then today, so they're all back now full time for those students who want to be in person. And we have about a 58% return of in-person learners. And we're thrilled about that. We want them, we want them in person. And as far as high school, the high school students started back on a hybrid schedule today. So the challenges, I will have to second what Superintendent Peters just said. It's really about what has transpired over the last year, students learning on a computer, and then making that transition now, once again, to in-person learning, while, by the way, maintaining all the COVID protocols that we have to maintain, such as social distancing and wearing a mask. But I have to say that I've been visiting schools, and I was in the high schools today, and the kids are glad to be back. Parents are glad that they are back, and they seem to be just going right along with those COVID guidelines. I also want to second what Superintendent Peters said. It's really all about not only mitigating learning loss, because we all know that there's learning loss, But before you get there, you have to address the social emotional. So what we are doing is we are partnering as well with community partners. We have a partnership with Bradley. We're excited to be a part of the RIDE grant with the Yale Ruler. Both of these programs are actually supporting staff on identifying and providing solutions and strategies to support social emotional learning. We know that the next several weeks, if we address the social emotional learning, then we have a base now to build upon mitigating that learning loss. And as we move into the summer, that's where we're going to be putting our energies, really high quality summer learning programs, project-based, engaging as many community partners that we have. I know that Providence is doing a community partner carousel for their families, I believe, and we are doing likewise. We're going to have a time where we'll offer our families a Zoom invite to a webinar about all the different community partners that are working with us and supporting our students in their learning.
I think just people just wanting to get back to normal
right.
in some case. Janine Automasi is the superintendent of schools in Cranston. Superintendent, let's talk about teachers for a second. Really, it's kind of twofold. You have teachers that are just, teaching in the classroom, but they are also parents too, and this has been a difficult time for them. I hear so many teachers, their day starts at 7 in the morning, ends at 9 o'clock at night, and oh yeah, they also have kids in their house too. Talk a little bit about the balancing act teachers are doing and the help that you're giving them.
Well, I speak from experience because I too am a parent who has a child in high school and have been balancing my job as superintendent as well as being a parent. So I see it on both sides. I will say our teachers have been amazing, very resilient, very flexible. I think back to last March when we had 1 week to turn around our entire practice in how we taught and how we spoke with kids and how we interacted. And in 1 week, we made that shift. So I can't applaud their work and their willingness to do this. Again, a complete 180 of what some people have been doing for 40 years. We turned around in a week. So everybody in the state who did that, picked up that task and ran with it, I can't be more appreciative, especially to the folks that I work with in Cranston. So yeah, for the teachers who were working at home and they had families, when we were in school from March to June, we had a lot more flexibility. There was more asynchronous learning, which means they could have put assignments into their Google Classroom, but kids weren't necessarily always in a classroom at the time that they would normally be in school. So that provided the families at home as well as the teachers at home with some flexibility of how they would be teaching and how they would be interacting with kids. Once September came and we still had some students at home, we also had students in the building. We've had students in our schools since September, not all of them. We were on a hybrid model. But so we still had maybe a 70-30 split, 70% students at home, 30 in person. So for teachers doing that, we provided a lot of professional development. We did all of our work internally. We didn't use outside agencies because, again, in our community, we felt we had the skills, the resources, and the ability to work with our own employees doing the training and doing the work. So we were fortunate because we've been using Google Classroom platforms for many years. So the switch was difficult for some, but not for others. So I think, and again, I just speak for Cranston, that we had a very good fundamental basis moving into distance learning, but providing the additional professional development, the ability to have the PD days where there were no official classes, but teachers were able to participate in professional development. So it's been a work in progress. Believe me, none of us have a handbook on how to deal with a pandemic. So I think we've done a really, really good job trying to balance all of the needs of families, students, staff, and ourselves, because it's all about making sure that we're still in the game and focused and worrying about what kids and staff need. So I think it's been a learning experience for all of us, but just even sending out an email saying, hey, thank you. We know you're working really hard. We appreciate it, and hang in there. You know, the end is near, but in a good way, right?
Yeah,
the end, not the prophetic catastrophe, but the end is near in a good way. We will be back to what we love about schools, and that's having children there really soon. So
right, absolutely. I know one thing that was great to see, and I'm sure students felt great about it, was when sports were able to come back. Of course, they looked very different. You had students in masks. Superintendent Levi, of course, for students who play sports, that was huge because it gave them some social interaction. But for students whose activities maybe are, music or drama, what are you doing to support them? Because so many of those activities weren't able to come back.
Right. First of all, it's Levis, by the way.
I apologize. I apologize,
okay.
Superintendent Levis.
A lot of work, so that's good. So we've tried to put in all different types of activities, but you're right. A lot of the activities that we had in the past have been limited, and so we're in Coventry, where on top of everything that's going on, we had a budget that failed 3 times, and we weren't even having sports because we didn't have the funds. And fortunately, we're able to move expenditures over. But I think the most important thing is, and I think everybody's indicated that, is teachers and students need to be together. And, at least I'll speak for myself. No matter what we do, when I step back and reflect, I'm always saying there's more we can do, right? I mean, this has been a horrific time. It's impacted everybody. We've talked about teachers that, people are dealing with their own trauma, and yet they're trying to support students and families. The other part is that we've all been in since early September, and many of the people that are telling us what we need to be doing are not working in schools. They're working from home. And I think we need to recognize that, what we've done is really, what's come loud and clear is that our teachers don't just like their job and like their kids, they love their kids. Our staff love their kids. Our custodians want to make the buildings. They wanted them so clean, so when people came in, students, teachers came in. And so I think the best thing that we can do is bring kids back in. We're going to be, after April vacation, we'll have all of our students in full time. And I think that's when the magic can happen, because if we can do that, we can do that successfully, then we can start looking at those other activities that we've eliminated. But to me, that's the magic that's happened, that all I ask for people to do is have one thing, and that's willingness. And I believe, and I'm sure I can speak for my colleagues here, that despite the challenges that we all face, and they may be different, people come to the table every day with willingness. And I don't know, if you're not in a school situation, you can't experience that magic, and we've all had different trials and tribulations, and we may be at different places, but at the end of the day, we work with incredible people that love their kids, that love their families. And, I look forward, and this sounds crazy, but I look forward to going into work every single day, despite the challenges I'm going to face, because I see students and teachers and all of our support staff, and despite the challenge, they love what they're doing. So hopefully, as we get back to, I don't know if we'll ever get back to normal, as Janine said, but as we move in that direction, I think that's the key, is that we'll start to increase those activities. Kids, we all prioritize social emotional, because without it, as my colleagues have said, there's no learning that's going to take place. And that's something I think we've done really well in Rhode Island. We can always improve, but we keep that focus on what's in the best interest of our students, our staff, and our families.
Superintendent Peters, something that kind of hit us right in the face last week in a story Sheena Lasciuto did with Larry Pirtle, who is the president of the National Education Association. He threw out some numbers really that, made your eyes open up. 5,000 kids completely off the grid. They have no idea where they are. 20,000 kids chronically absent. These numbers much higher if they were in class. So really, and this could be for any community, the big question is, how do you get those kids who are totally missing, or the kids that are chronically missing, engage them to come back to school? How do we do that?
Those are just frightening numbers, no question. And any educator would tell you that we can't sleep at night when we hear numbers like that. And we've not been impervious to that in Providence. Initially, we had some 1,000 students where we didn't know where they were. We had no contact, or they had very low attendance. And my philosophy since day one has been, students don't get a COVID pass. I know it's a pandemic, but you don't get to sit in the Brown University's admissions office next year and say, hey, I went to school during COVID, I need a pass. And because we've had that approach, we've literally rolled up our sleeves and put on our tennis shoes, and we've gone door knocking. So we've knocked on over 1,000 doors. We've made over 7,000 or 8,000 outreach calls to check on families. And we have literally knocked on every house of where we thought students were not engaged, low attendance, or completely disengaged. And our goal when we stepped on that front porch was to solve the problem. So many of the families, when we knocked on that door, they said, hey, we are a multi-generational family. Our student has to work. There's a young lady that I frequent the Dunkin' Donuts by the office. It seems like every time I drive by there, she's at work in the middle of the day, at the end of the day, in the early morning. And I said, what is going on? I said, tell me what's happening. And I'm nervous that you're not in school, and how are things going? And she said, no, I'm not with my studies because I'm on virtual. It's very flexible, so I can get my classes done at night, but I've got to work because my mom is sick and my dad is out of work. So these are just unprecedented times. So what we've tried to do is take one student at a time, knock on doors. And we get to that front door and we say, we love you, we miss you. How can we help re-engage? And some families say, well, we don't even have a laptop. I'll solve that. Let me walk to the car. We'll get a laptop. We'll get you a hotspot. You know what? We'll stand right here and we'll connect you with your teachers. So it's just been an all hands effort, just trying to make sure by any means necessary that we connect children, we connect with families and ensure, and I'm pretty sure all my colleagues on the call have done some of the same things. It's just, we have to do whatever it takes. And I talk about me and my team, but when you see principals and teachers combing the neighborhoods, knocking on doors, delivering supplies, doing projects. You see a teacher in the front yard with their whiteboard. I hadn't seen in a couple of weeks. Let's do this math lesson real quick. It's very humbling. So we've just exhausted every measure, every resource. And again, I just want to, I think it's important to understand, at the end of the day, no question, we have to account for 100% of our children because there is no COVID pass. So every resource, every measure that we can exhaust to bring students back, to help teachers bridge that gap, we're going to make sure that we spare no expense because we know these are very difficult times. You talked earlier about many of our teachers, they have children of their own. So they're literally teaching from home with their kids right next to them. So I don't know if there will ever be the normal that where we came from. And I've also heard of a lot of innovation that's occurring in schools too. So and I don't think that there's a will to go back to the way that it was because we all agreed that it wasn't working for every child. So it has also given us the opportunity to innovate because when you think about a place like Providence, 90% of our students live in poverty, children of color. They've been dealing with pandemics all their lives, not just the pandemic of COVID-19, but the pandemic of poverty, the pandemic of police brutality, of racism, of the housing, wage, and income gap. So these are pandemics that have been pervasive in their lives. So it's incumbent upon us to make sure that we work as aggressively as possible to close these gaps and set our children up for success any way that we can. That's why we've got to get in the streets and the neighborhoods and the supermarkets, get out of our suits and put on our tennis shoes and go find our students and bring them back to where we believe we can support them and we have them reach a measure of success that we know that they can attain.
I want to talk about some of the successes too, because there were some good sides to virtual learning. I know Mike and I were having a discussion the other day. You spoke to an elementary school teacher who said she's never seen so much parental engagement. I think something like 90% support from families during virtual learning. She's never seen it that high. Dr. McWilliams, did you see the same thing among your students and families?
We definitely saw an increase in parent engagement, parents really participating with their students, particularly the younger students, definitely. And, just knowing that they are supporting their children, However, with that, I will say, comes some frustration because of the curriculum and what the students are learning. And many of our parents didn't have, those same opportunities of the curriculum when they were growing up. And so sometimes I actually have examples of teachers who would get on the phone at night and meet with the parents and walk through some of the material with them so that then they understood what was going to happen the next day. But yeah, absolutely, parents have been our partners, and I think that is some of the good that we need to take out of this. When we think about going into whatever the next year holds, we can't really just close the door on what we've just done. We actually have to take the good of all the things that we've learned, be innovative, be creative, ways in which we can meet students where they are at, meet families where they are at, support them, give them what they need, and personalize that learning. And not only just with the time, but you really have to think about curriculum and resources and a tiered system of support. So you're hitting all areas, it's the whole child.
So let's talk a little bit about that, Superintendent Automasi. As we're coming back to September, we're just trying to get through this year, okay? And then you got to deal with the summertime. We get it. But September is going to come fast. Just by listening to all of you and hearing what you're saying, do we need to come up with not like a brand new model of education, but really tweaking things for our kids that might be behind when they come in September? And even the kids who might not be behind, they just don't want to sit there and say, I already know this. I want to keep moving. Do we need to look at that?
I think all of us are very concerned about learning loss from the past year and a half. Some kids did great with distance learning. Some kids really enjoyed being on a computer, working with people at their own pace in their own homes. For other kids, it just didn't work. So we really have to identify the kids that suffered the most from not being in school. So that's the first point. But some of the innovation that has come out of this, for the teacher who maybe stood there and just gave notes all period, well, that can't happen anymore. So they've used a lot more technology, and kids respond to that. They're the digital natives, as they say. So all of the innovative things that I think we've learned over the past year, and again, we had to do it quickly, but I think all of those things that have engaged kids during this, they should still be used, because I think kids will further their skills by learning that their teachers are learners too. And we set the best model by being willing to learn new and different things and change our craft. So I think as far as kids go, we've been good models for them to learn resilience and change and all of the good stuff that has come of this. I think we are all concerned what happens in September and how we respond to it. It may take years for us to regain the ground that we've lost over the past few months, but I think we're up to it, and I'm hopeful that students are able to come back to school, re-engage, and it be more exciting and maybe a little more as using the technology that they respond to.
One of the things that when I go back to think about when this pandemic really started, hard to believe it was over a year ago at this point, but Mike and I were covering it, and the students that were graduating that didn't get to have that moment. And you know how hard you work through high school to get to that moment of graduation and to feel that pride. And they didn't get that graduation ceremony. So what are schools doing, and Superintendent Levis, we'll go to you for this one. What are schools doing to try and make that graduation happen this year? Do you already have plans in place?
So there's a work group from the Superintendent Association working with Department of Health and RIDE that are working on it. In Coventry, we're basically doing scenario planning. Instead of we're gonna do the big, Ryan Center, even though that may be we may have that someplace on the table. We're looking at all different potential options. I think one thing that's interesting this year that I'm getting from our high school principal is that, last year, like you said, this hit us in March 13th, and it was devastating. I don't know how else to say it. And I think, but all of us did something that, despite the devastation, really was special for the students. I know we did something where every student had the spotlight on them with 5 or 6 guests for about 15 minutes. And, we took, lemons and made lemonade. This year, I think the expectations, at least what I'm seeing from some of our seniors, is less because they saw what happened last year. But we're planning on a prom. Again, we have different scenarios. We're planning on like a class day because we have to make it special. And my other thought is that if we can bring everybody back in, and I know there's challenges and I know there's different variants, but if we can bring people back in, then we should be able to pull together these larger celebrations. And because you're right, it is a rite of passage, and I think we're all working on it. So, our caveat is we said to everybody, no matter what we're planning, recognize that in any given moment, we may have to pull way back. And I think as long as we state that, but we want to make it special for everybody, and it's not just our students, but it's their families, our teachers, all of us. All of our teachers have contributed to that senior that walks across the stage. They don't show up senior year. So it's a celebration for everybody. So I'm sure that we're all looking at, how we can do this and make it special. I think we have a leg up on last year. Let's think about it. A year ago, they weren't saying we'd have a vaccine until maybe another 6-8 months, a year from now. So there's a lot of positives, like you said, and we've all talked about. And I think we're all in the midst of planning and going to make it as special and as celebratory as we can.
So we're at the end of March here, and I think the number is in the next couple of weeks, 500,000 people in the state of Rhode Island will be vaccinated. Population is about 1 million, so you could say we're getting there, although you hear the CDC with so many new variants coming up and the numbers going up. Maybe we can just go around quickly to kind of wrap things up. You can all chime in on this. We are hearing colleges are already announcing that they're going to go back full-time in September. Where do you think we will be for elementary schools, middle schools and high schools? Superintendent Peters, we can start with you.
Yeah, so I think we'll be somewhere in between. I think Dr. Williams said it earlier. There's no appetite to go back to where we were. And then we've learned so much from the past year. There are students who have just thrived on this virtual learning platform, and there are students who just don't like it. So we think that we have to be somewhere in between. Obviously, we want to welcome back our full complement of students, but we also know that there isn't a vaccine yet for students 16 years and under, and there are parents that will still be nervous about it. So we want to make sure that we can accommodate as many parents and families as we can. So we think that there may be a bit of a footprint for a virtual learning opportunity, but I tell you what, there's nothing that beats in-person learning. The research proves it. 70% of our parents who've chosen to send their students back to in-person learning have spoken loud and clear. So we're excited about welcoming them back, but we want to be flexible and accommodating because we know there's whatever that new normal is, we may not necessarily be ready because we won't have the entire population vaccinated. So we think that there will be a combination of where we are now, but we want to open the doors for as many families to return as possible.
Dr. McWilliams, how about you?
Yes, absolutely. We also want to see all of our learners back, but we realize that, as Superintendent Peters said, that it's not a reality. There will be those parents who aren't comfortable sending their students back. So I would hope, right now I said we're seeing about 58% of our students in person. I would hope when it comes to the fall that maybe we'll be seeing 70 to 75% of our students in person. And then we'll have to have some type of opportunity, virtual learning, for those who are not comfortable returning. But do I think that we all could return? I think with the vaccination and all the protocols in place that I would love to open our doors to all of them. I just don't think that all will come, based on, what we're hearing from parents. Even now, with some of those parents, we know that they're just not comfortable.
Superintendent Norton-Massey, let's get your response. You have two of the biggest high schools in the state of Rhode Island. Where do you see Cranston in September?
I really want everyone back in person. I think that if we can play sports and we can have our graduations and we can do all the things that come with being in school, then I think all the kids should be in school. Our teachers have been in the buildings. They've been in every day since September. We've, had a few bumps in the road, but I think by September, the students need to be in. I'm especially worried about high schoolers. I think many of our high school kids are getting very comfortable not coming to school, not having to get up early, not having to come in. So I would like to see us getting back to engaging in person. Now, there's always the opportunity for using our, like I said, using our technology, but only judiciously. I don't want to see it replace kids coming into school. High school is more than just academics. I mean, it's important, but the socialization, the friends you make, the clubs you're in, the theater, the music, the band, the sports teams, the relationships with teachers, all of that is missing when kids are not there in school, good or bad. There's some bad things that may come along with that, but having students in the building, I think, is critical to really have them gain a full experience before they graduate.
And Superintendent Levis, it seems like that's been your theme throughout this Zoom as well, is really wanting to get all students back in the classroom. Do you see that happening before September, by September?
We'll have everybody back, and that'll be approximately, I think, 80% of our students after April vacation. And, we've, like everybody, we've been very thoughtful. I've never been more reflective in my entire existence during this pandemic. And I'm planning on a full return. Obviously, we'll deal with situations as they arise, but I feel that everything we've done, we've built up. And as Janine said, if we can bring everybody back this year in sports and proms and graduations and culminating activities, I think we'll be in a really good position. We've learned a lot. We've learned how to handle crisis on steroids. So, anything can happen, but I feel that it's, we all keep that laser beam focused on what's in the best interest of students, and there's no alternative to having them back in our schools in front of teachers and support staff who love them and care about them and their families. So we'll be back.
Well, I think I speak for both of us when I say we give credit to all four of you for how you've handled the last year, and also to the teachers, to the students, to their families. It has not been easy, but it sounds like you're all learning as you go, and we'll just have to see what happens next.
Thank you very much for taking out the time and speaking with us.
Thank you.
Thank you.